Africa's political history is not complete without appreciating the roles that youth played in achieving their country's independence. In the years leading to independence, youth were the driving force behind the nationalist activities that led to the dismantling and eventual overthrow of colonialism and the colonial masters. In Nigeria, the activities of Herbert Macaulay, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, H.O. Davis, Tafawa Balewa, Ahmadu Bello, and Samuel Akintola, among many others in their 20s and 30s, are legendary. But where are young Nigerians now when it comes to the country's political scene? In 2020, Nigerian youth trooped to the streets protesting against the now disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS. In what popularly is known as the End-SARS protest, Nigerian youth seem to have woken up to the power they hold. Or have they? In spite of great adversities faced across various areas across the country, they stood resolute and passed a message of intent to the general populace and the government. These protests were expected to usher in a new dawn for Nigerian youth. But without adequate political participation and engagement, as well as the distrust of the electoral process, the actualization of this is in question, especially ahead of Nigeria's 2023 elections. Can Nigeria's youth position themselves not only for opportunities in governance, but also for engagement in the political scheme of things? How should young Nigerians approach politics? Is there space for them at the table, or do they need to break the table and demand a new one be built? I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun, sitting in for Suleiman Alede. Welcome. And for our discourse tonight, a few things I want you to keep in mind. Nigeria has one of the largest populations of youth in the world, with more than 60% of the population in the youth demographic. Politics in Nigeria continues to be dominated by older Nigerians, many of whom have been part of the political scheme of things for decades. The 2023 general elections are less than a year away, and it presents another opportunity for Nigerian youth to throw their hats in the ring, but do their current realities back strong participation? And there have been suggestions as to how this should be done. Some Nigerians say young people need to infiltrate political parties or establish their own political movements. Is one way more likely to work than another, or is it a combination of options? And the review of the Constitution has also seen independent candidacy emerge in Nigeria. While this could present an opportunity for young, politically inclined Nigerians, the system is still very much one where money reigns supreme. Independent candidacy may be difficult. Now, to join the conversation with me today on the show, I have Tari Taylaur. She is the ward chairman for Ward A, Etiosa, for the Youth Party. And joining me in the studio, I have Christopher Ojo. He's the CEO of Amari Flag, and he also contested in 2015 and 2019 for the Owan Federal Constituency seat in Edo State. Welcome to VSA, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, thanks for having us.
I think we need to start almost like we're going down history lane, because it's very difficult, probably impossible, to write Nigeria's political history and independence without the young Nigerians who were part of that movement. But we've seen a shift. We've seen that shift over the decades, and we've seen it shift away from youth participation in politics. So Christopher, let me start with you. What do you think is responsible for that trajectory, that shift away from having young people front and center, be part of the scheme, be deciding factors for how things are happening?
In my opinion, I think it has to do with self-esteem. The people who are in power today, like you rightly mentioned, they started as youth. There's not been a concerted effort to actually take these youths along and also bring them into the scheme of things. They are only used in areas of miscreants or what have you. So it gets to the point where the youths become very, very less self-confident. They don't have confidence in themselves. They don't even believe they can do it. I'll give you an example. When I was first running for election in 2015, it was the youth that were telling me, oh, this is a seat for old men. You have to chill. You know, you can go for... I'm thinking, as at then, the president of France, I was older than him.
Wow.
So what are you talking about? So it has to do with self-esteem. People need to know what they carry as youths. And more than anything, like you alluded to completely, the youth in Nigeria, they have a large demography. So To answer your question straightforward, they don't have confidence in themselves. That is in my opinion.
Okay. Tari, do you agree? Is it an issue of where the lack of confidence that young people have over the decades has led to their exclusion? That's the word I actually use now. Exclusion from fully participating in Nigeria's politics.
I think it's a factor, it's a factor, but I don't think it's the entire story. While there are a lot of young people who lack the confidence, to step out for public office and participate in the political space, there are also a lot who are very confident. I mean, Christopher is here, you contested, I am here, I have contested before. So we're part of perhaps a minority, but it's a growing minority, So confidence is definitely one factor. But I think that, young people as well, we have all grown up in this system where we do not see opportunity, for our participation being created. We don't see a level playing field. We don't see the potential or the possibility of coming in and being able to be dominant and have a strong voice and all of that. So it makes a lot of people shrink back. I think that if a lot of young people felt that there was a level playing field, if a lot of them felt that, I could come in, I don't need to have all the money in the world, I don't need to have one godfather somewhere, if I just am able to communicate that I have something of value to offer and be able to build a proper structure, I think a lot of young people will go for it. But too many people have been disappointed by the current state of our political landscape. So you can't, and I mean, we live in a society these days where everybody is hustling, everybody wants to live a good life. Everybody wants to be able to eat and put food on the table. So when they look at it and they're like, you know what, this is just going to take so much out of me, except you have somebody who is literally hand-holding you and bankrolling you and all of that, it deters a lot of young people. So I believe that the political system itself is to blame. It does not open up itself and say, you know what, young people come and come and find a level playing field, come and find an enabling environment to put yourself forward. So that's the problem until they address those systemic issues. And I think perhaps we've seen little glimpses of hope. Over the years, there was a not too young to run bill. There's the recent electoral amendment of little steps, but I believe that the space is growing wider. I believe that young people the more young people that step out, the more others are realizing that, okay, you know what, hold on, I could do this, but it takes a lot of confidence, it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of commitment to be able to put yourself and literally put your heart in the ring to participate in this current political landscape of Nigeria.
All right, so let's talk about a situation that many thought would really lead to young Nigerians getting out there, putting themselves forward. And that would be the EndSARS protests. And there was a lot of energy. We saw young people organize. We saw them determined. We saw them stay out on the streets a lot longer than most people thought they would. And with the EndSARS protests, many expected that it would then galvanize or turn itself into some kind of youth political movement, not necessarily a party. Christopher, what did you expect to come out of the protest then, especially since it's been a long time since we've seen young Nigerians speaking with one voice about an issue as critical as that?
Yes, I think you're completely right. I was of the opinion that that was going to morph into a political movement. However, we've seen in the past that the energy that youths have in most cases, I completely agree with Tari, what she alluded to. The energy that youths have in most cases is kind of temporal, okay? We come up, we're hyped in a moment, we want to do this, we want to get it done right now, but these things actually take more than moments, okay? So we have to tarry, have to sit back, have to organize. Again, political parties are not just a pressure group or sit down in one room. There's a whole lot. Let's take for example, you want to run for president. It takes a lot. There are a lot of polling units, a lot of states and things to cover. So I think if the youths would have wanted to go forward, what would have happened would be to build a structure, a structure across states, across local government, across every locality to actually have a voice. However, it's not done. So what I think actually can happen at this time is for you to begin to know that they can actually get this done and let's start to sensitize ourselves and start to build these clusters in little places. That way we can morph into a bigger group. Again, money in politics, we can't say it enough. It may even surprise you that the electorate or the populace, they are even worse. Because if we're talking of spending money in politics, who do we give the money to? It is the electorate, right? So the electorate, in their defense, they think like, oh, when people get elected, they don't remember us. Let's just get our own money now. Yes, and you can go do you. However, if we can have a paradigm shift as a populace to say, okay, you know what, enough is enough. Let's give this a chance. Let's give youth or let's give people a chance to actually go without having to pay this much. Because they're actually turning it into business, right? If you go take out a loan, you get a godfather or whatnot to put money in your election, you are bound to pay back. So I think people should begin to realize that these are some of the problems. Again, they are not the only or main problem, but these are some of the problems. So youth organizations should be stronger across nation. That way we can have a more persistent voice.
Okay, so Tari, do you agree with Christopher on that? Do you think there was a golden opportunity in a way that was lost? How could young Nigerians have galvanized this anger, the frustration, the disappointments in a system that also allowed SARS atrocities to go unpunished for so long into something more than protest?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. SARS, as fantastic as it was, it's sometimes events would occur that would basically awaken people. There are things that would happen that would kind of snap people, into action. And I think that's what SARS was. But it's not going to end there. As young people, we cannot be reactive in our quest to participate in the political space. We have to be proactive, which means that, as Christopher is saying, structures are everything. Structure. At whatever level you want to contest, at whatever level you want to participate, you have to be part of a structure, which leads to the arguments that you gave in your introduction, where you were like, do we create new political parties, or do we infiltrate or go into the existing ones? I think it's both ways. We create our political structure, our political parties. We build our own structures, but there's no reason why we should not also leverage on those structures that have been built by the existing parties. So I think it's both ways. Young people who want to be active in the political space, you need to get into APC, get into PDP, and as well, you need to come to youth party, you need to come to the other, parties, and let us build structures. Because, as I'm sure Christopher would also agree with me, as a candidate for any election, you are nothing without a structure. People, it's all about structures, polling units, being able to communicate with different people across board. You need those structures. And it's not, those structures are not built during election season. Those structures are built, in the timelines that are between elections. So it's an ongoing thing. It's a full-time job. And as fantastic as SARS was in awakening a lot of people, because a lot of people, it was like a spark. It was like something being ignited. And that is great. We absolutely need that. But personally, I knew that it was going to fizzle out because, I'm Nigerian. I've lived here in Nigeria all my life. I know our people. We know that we get caught up in whatever is going on at the moment. And then after our reality sets in and we adjust and we go back to the status quo, fine, that has been our way. But the more we are confronted with the harsh realities of life, the more we're all being awakened to know that, things cannot go on like this. Yeah. And I'm very happy that with the recent PVC drive, a lot of people advocated for people to go and register for their PVCs. A lot of people went to register for their PVCs. Even now, all of the narrative that you hear, whether it's on social media or whether it's in our informal conversations, people are realizing that, we are a bit compliant when we exclude ourselves from the political process. That way, we are giving permission to anybody, people who are not even qualified to make decisions on our behalf. We are giving them permission to take those positions of authority and lead us, maybe astray or lead us in ways that we don't want to be led. So EndSARS, I think, was an awakening, but we need more than an awakening. We need consistent action. We need consistent orientation. We need to be proactive, like I said, and then we need to understand the system, because you cannot conquer anything that you do not understand. You cannot dominate anything that you have not studied to see how it works.
So let's talk about understanding the system, because we know that money is unfortunately very central to politics in Nigeria. Now, in the run-up to the 2019 general elections, the cost of nomination forms was as high as 45 million naira. That's about $125,000 for presidential aspirants, 22.5 million naira, about $60,000 for governorship aspirants, 7 million naira, about $19,000 for the Senate, and 3.8 million naira, about $10,500 for the House of Representatives. And as Christopher has said, it's not just the forms. You also have an electorate that has gotten used to what they get at the polling unit or leading up to elections as their own share of the national cake or their own dividends of democracy, because they hardly see participation or attention from many of these people running in between the elections. So few Nigerian youth are financially buoyant enough to pay for these sums, to even have donors as well. And you see a situation where donors are typically looking, and godfathers are looking for older men who they believe have the chances of winning and being able to pay back. So therefore, young people are naturally disenfranchised. So Christopher, let me start with you. How do we conquer the financial hurdle for young Nigerians? Because one thing to deal with is the electorate that's expecting some kind of financial compensation for their vote, but a bigger issue is, of course, just even entering the door when you can't even pay the gate fee.
Yes, again, like we've already mentioned, we have an issue at hand when it comes to finances. It baffles me a lot, and I'll tell you why. If we are modeling our democracy after other democracies, we should already know that in most countries there is nothing like nomination form. Okay, so that is why I laughed, and I laughed hysterically when they were saying not too young to run. Okay, let's put it into context. Someone that is making, let's make it very robust, someone that is making 150,000 naira a month, okay, times 1 year, times 4 years. How do you expect that person to put money together to buy a nomination form?
So what if the party says we'll give young candidates 50% off?
I think to an extent that will help. However, why should there even be a hurdle such as that kind of money that you mentioned, right? So I think to make it more competitive for the youth, first of all, there need to be a reduction drastically when it comes to those monies. And might I also ask, well, what are these monies used for? Okay? Because the parties themselves, they collect all of this money. They still go around. You as the candidate, you end up spending money. Then you ask yourself, how are they actually using this money? Right? Now, go back to the electorate. I come from a system, or I've been part of a system whereby when you're running for election, people actually contribute to your election. Fundraising, right? But here in Nigeria, reverse is the case. People expect you to pay or buy something for them, or buy something just to make them support you. Now, it makes me think, are these people, which are the populists, are they actually enthusiastic about change? Because if we keep doing the same thing over and over, we'll keep getting the same result. Now, about you saying that the godfathers and the supporters, they trust
older men.
Older men. Yes.
Not even older people.
Older men. Okay. They trust older men because they are in the same class. Okay. It's not necessarily that they are more honest or they will pay them, but they are in the same class. They do not know, in some cases, how to relate with the younger people because they know, of course, these younger people has little or nothing to lose, that they will revolt at the end of the day. So they go for people that they know they have something to lose, put them in some other kind of meetings and what have you to get them to budge. So I think the issue of money in Nigeria politics, or Africa as the case may be, should be greatly discouraged.
Okay,
Yes.
so Tari, I want to talk about your experience in this regard because I know in running for the Etiosa, I believe it is Etiosa ward seat, there has to have been an experience you had with the electorate in particular. And I bring this up because some people have described Nigeria as a gerontocracy, which is a form of rule in which older people, an entity is ruled by leaders who are significantly older than most of the adult population. And in many political structures, power within the ruling class accumulates with age, making the oldest people the holders of power. So you also sort of have a populace that tends to look towards older people for leadership and some form of authority. And then you're now also having a populace that's asking you to pay them to even consider you or to even vote for you. What experience did you have in regards to that, and how can we address that?
Okay, definitely we know that money politics is a reality, in our system. And of course, I experienced it on both ways. My campaign was entirely crowd-funded, which means that people within my constituency is Ward A, Etiosa local government, which is from Lekki to Femi Okunu. So my campaign was entirely funded by people within my constituency who I approached, and I shared my vision with them, and they said, you know what, yes, we think you are the right person for the job, so we will support you financially with our network and everything that they could, to be able to do the job. However, there are two kinds of constituents. Of course, there are those like I guess middle class, constituents who are able to afford and say, I will give you this amount of money, I would open doors for you and all of that. But there are others who are literally holding their hands out and saying, what are you going to give to me? So I was able to interact with both sides of, of those constituents. And when it came to, whenever I went out, especially because Lekki is a very complex and diverse, constituency. You have the middle class section, which is phase one, Femi Okunu, all those estates that are around there. But then there are also a lot of these more lower income communities where people are more artisans and are more daily income earners, market women and all of that. And they as well recognize the need for good leadership. When you share the vision with them, they are happy to, they see the need. Nobody likes to suffer. Nobody likes to be living in squalor or living in appalling conditions. So everybody does want change to some degree. But you also cannot remove the hunger factor. The fact that these people, 1,000 naira goes a very long way in adjusting their current condition at the moment. And really, many of them are thinking for the moment. But you see, I always, you cannot change that kind of mindset, without orientation. Because at the end of the day, you can give the 1,000 naira, but somebody else can come and give 5,000 naira, and your vote goes to the highest bidder. So at the end of the day, it's a lot of orientation. I found myself engaging them and sitting with them and saying, okay, no problem. You know what? Why don't you collect the money? Look at the people that you are collecting money from. For the next 4 years, you're going to be suffering the same atrocities you're suffering. You're going to be living in flooded environments. You're going to be living in these filthy, appalling conditions because of 1,000 naira that you take today. So for some of them, you will see a shift in their mindset. For others, it will be like, I beg, all this man you're talking is nonsense. I just want my 1,000 naira. So it's hit or miss. You cannot change everybody's mind, but you can change some people's minds. However, in the long term, systemically, what can we do about this? There needs to be a lot more voter enlightenment. And, the current state of our economy, it's a blessing as well as it's a curse. When I say it's a blessing, I mean, it is the easiest way to wake people up. It is the easiest way to let people know that, is this how you want to carry on? You cannot continue doing the things the way you've been doing it and expect change. You cannot continue to, put yourself as a candidate for stomach infrastructure and sell yourself to the person that gives you rice and gives you oil and gives you 500 naira or 1,000 naira and think that you are going to get any sort of quality of life. So that's the These are the messages we need to continue to drum into the electorate at the lowest level, because, and not just at during election season, because during election season, they're not even interested in hearing what you have to say, because they're like, all you politicians are the same. It is now you people remember us. So anything you are saying, they're just like, yeah, whatever, just give me my 1,000 naira. But if you are engaging them, you know, in those periods that when it's not even yet election season, you are much more able to resonate with them and let them know that they have the power to make the changes that we all want to see. So I think we all have a part to play in this. I personally believe that orientation is the biggest, you know, tool in changing that way of doing things, because I saw it happen during my campaign. There were so many people I came to, and you will literally see the change of mind that will happen when they're like, okay, well, actually, you are right. So, you know, these people, they just come, they just bring this. But at the end of the day, you will never see them again. And look at us, just look at how we're living. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, orientation is the way to go.
So what I feel that Tari has just described is the sentiment of apathy that many adult Nigerians, not just young Nigerians, have. And if we want to encourage young Nigerians to become active in politics, and that doesn't mean necessarily running for office, it just means being engaged. And being active and asking questions, we have to address the issue of apathy. Do you think the apathy that young Nigerians have is different than what an older Nigerian has? Especially in this day and age where the conversation is around Japa. For many people, they do not feel that they've seen the dividends of this democracy we tout as the best form of government. We have situations where we're graduating hundreds of thousands of students and our unemployment rate is still one of the highest on the continent. There's nothing else for them. So this youth apathy that also leads to an apathy around the system and around political engagement, how do we address that? Is it different than the apathy older Nigerians have?
I can say yes, that can be a factor. However, when it comes to change, you be the change you want to see, right? Now, I think the older Nigeria, just to piggyback on what we've been saying, the older Nigerians, they've been able to get away with this because they actually don't do the work. They don't do the job, okay? Because it takes a lot of energy and resources to actually do the work you are elected to do, okay? So because they don't do this work, they just sit in, they're just like placeholders, so they actually see themselves going back. Whereby if a youth was there or something, a youth was elected, there's a youth that knows that he or she is going to be around for the next 3, 4, 5 decades. It's going to try to preserve that name. Now, coming to apathy, it all depends on what you think as a person. The country is bad, okay? The economy is bad. People are not getting jobs. Do you know deliberately? Yes, we can still say that these people have better opportunities than the youths in Nigeria. Let's take technology, for example. Major software or major applications that are being used in the world right now, most of them, the inventors or the owners are below the age of 50, okay? So the thing we should be telling ourselves as youth is how can we make ourselves more useful? If you want to jackpot, like you rightly said, if there's anybody jackpot, are you going to jackpot to somewhere that you don't even have a foot holding? Or how are you going to start with that place? I've been around the world, okay? I still find it interesting to say that the only place you have a sense of responsibility, a complete sense of belonging is here in your country, okay? So I think youths need to begin to know that they can be the change they want to see, okay? Because people actually build the countries that they are going to. I saw a documentary that actually blew me away, The Men Who Built America. It wasn't the government. So these are things we should start to educate ourselves, like Tari said, and I'm very envious of her that her constituents, they were actually contributing money. I will tap into that grace so that I get a constituent contribution, okay? Because that will go a long way. Because the thing about contribution is that it really necessarily does not matter how much you get in contribution, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Anybody who gives you a penny will be with you. You don't have to go pull them up.
All right, we're going to take a break now, and there's still a number of issues that I want us to address today. We're also going to be looking at the idea behind starting from the local constituency, and we've heard many aspirants now already promising to give young people a place in their cabinet. Should they be swayed by these promises? And what do young people bring to the table that's been missing? This is Village Square Africa. We'll be back. And here are a few points to note in our conversation. The Not Too Young to Run bill that was passed or now acts before 2019 has seen a lot of difference in the interest of Nigerian youth in vying for higher offices. But the issue of finances and structure are still foremost challenges. Presidential assent to this bill was something that drove Nigerian youth to participate more in politics, as shown by statistics. In 2015, there were 21% of youth participation in politics. By 2019, when the bill was signed into law, that rose to 34.2%. Across the country, there are millions of unregistered youth, and if this massive demographic is convinced to participate in elections, the possibilities are endless for them. But now this is important. Despite the track record of older generations, youth in politics in Nigeria is fast becoming the exclusive preserve of older politicians, as seen from the constant recycling of government officials, especially those in their 60s. For many years, particularly after the country's return to democratic governance in 1999, youth were at best seen as supporters, mobilizers, or even political foot soldiers hired to instigate violence, manipulate elections, and intimidate opposing parties. While this image is not completely the fault of the older generation, these groups enjoyed the idea of youth as political mercenaries rather than competitors. Now, still with me, I have Tari, Taylaur, and Christopher Ojo. And I think I need to start from where I ended in that things to note. Having the older generation of Nigerian politicians recognizing young Nigerian politicians or those with political interests as competitors. Tari, what do you think? Have we been able to, or are we in the process of having young people change from looking like foot soldiers and mobilizers and unfortunately thugs to be used to being active competitors for the space?
Oh, I think the shift is gradually moving. No, you know, more and more, we realize that in life generally, people, it's how you present yourself that people will take you. Look, don't get it twisted. There will always be that demographic of young people who will be foot soldiers, who will be thugs during elections. That's something that, you know, it's going to take a long time to be able to change. However, there's also a crop of young people who are becoming more and more enlightened, who are becoming more and more awakened and even passionate about seeing the Nigeria that they want. And these young people have become a force to reckon with. And thank God for the tools that we now have in our hands, tools like Twitter and social media, which empower us and give us a voice to be able to contribute, you know, to the political discourse. That wasn't there 10, 15 years ago at the level that it is today. Right now, you know, politicians actually listen, because at the end of the day, you know, they know that you need public favor, you need public opinion to be favorable towards you if you want to run for certain offices or if you want to push certain policies. And young people, we have been able to position ourselves, albeit, you know, whether it's behind a 140 characters on Twitter, which is not enough, but still, it is a form of power. And we need to now identify how we can make ourselves much more of a force to reckon with. Look, value is everything. You are only as good as the value you bring to the table. I'm a young person. I went to people who can be my grandfather, people who can be my parents, and I said to them, I want to be your counselor. I want to make decisions for you that would affect you. And they bought into my vision. Why? Because they saw that this person, she's not just coming to us with nothing to offer. I was able to show them that, okay, this is what I've been able to achieve here. This is what I've been able to do here. And these are not people you can fool. These are people who are smart people. So you have to be able to grow your value wherever you are as a young person. If you want to come into the political space, don't just sit down and say, oh, I need money. Oh, I need a godfather. Oh, I need political structure. No, first of all, the first thing that you are selling to anybody is your value. What are you bringing to the table? What have you done? Wherever you are, with the little resources you have, what have you been able to accomplish with that? When you can now show people what you've been able to do with the little, then people will be able to trust you with more. So that's the first thing. And that's the thing. We have a lot of young people who are, who are occupying one public office or the other, possibly because of who their father is, or, some connection they have or the other. You have very few young people who have been able to get to those positions because of, what they brought to the table. But that is changing. Nobody can be fooled anymore. People recognize crap when they see it these days. So you have to build yourself. Whether you want to contest in 2023, whether you want to contest even, in further years down the line, take the time and build your portfolio, build your value, so that when you do come to the table, some of these parties, they would even push to get you to be their candidate because they see that you have a voice, because they see that you have become a force to reckon with. So that is the first, the first thing that we all have to offer. The value that we bring. And that's my message to every young person. Build your value, grow your value, then you would have much more of a voice at the negotiating table.
And so your answer has actually taken me to my next question, which was, of course, looking at the positioning of how young people are positioning themselves for leadership. And we've seen that some states have tried to bring more youth on board. We know that the Oyo State Speaker, the State House of Assembly, the Speaker is quite young. We've seen in Kwara States, they have a 25-year-old senior special assistant who has also been a commissioner. And she was a commissioner when she was a core member. And we've seen special advisors to a number of National Assembly members who are young people, and they're touting this as them bringing young people to the table, or at least bringing them under their wing and mentoring them. So the question is this positioning enough? And then we also hear about political mentorship. Godfatherism, as we like to call it, it's something that exists in politics all around the world. I think it's the scope or the nature of godfather and fatherism in our politics that's different. So what do we do about having youth position themselves to be able to take up some of these positions? Should we be happy with what is being given?
That is a very good question. By no means, I'm not going to condemn any of those leaders that are bringing youths on. That is a laudable thing. But the question that begs for answer is, at what capacity? And who are these people that are being brought on, okay? Because if you bring people on based off of the fact that you know them or they are related, it's still the same thing, okay? Or you bring people who you see as puppets, who you can actually manipulate to do your bid, it still wouldn't cut it. Now, we also have to know this, okay? There are classes of youths, okay? There are youths who are actually good for nothing other than being thugs. Let's put that out there. They are not employable. They can do way more than they're doing. While there are also youths who are very resourceful. Now, the difference between the youths who are resourceful and those who are thug-like is that the resourceful youth, they don't put themselves in ways that can be used for those bad things, right? So they end up not being in line for any of these things, okay? And there are other kind of youth who are actually not interested in politics. Why? Because they see it as a waste of time. Now we're talking about people registering for PVC. It's one thing to register. It's another thing to be patient enough to vote, okay? So those are things that we need to actually look into. Now, let's put it in context. has there been a deliberate attempt to say a percentage of government should be this age? Okay. In other countries, there are percentages that say, okay, things like business or minority, okay, this percentage goes to the minority. Has there been a solid line to say this percentage of this has to be used?
So basically, affirmative action to get young people, some kind of young or youth quota for Nigerian governance.
Yes. So if we have that in place, the government itself will have no option than to do more of the encouragement to get the young people to be involved in the system. But that is not in place. You get, if you can even count how many youths are in the government, that means there are no youths, okay? Because can you sit back now and say, oh, there are S number of 65 years old people? No, because there are a lot of them. It will take a lot of time to count them. So if we can now single out, this state has this 25, this state has 30 years old, that means they are not enough. So we need to encourage ourselves, first of all, have us get involved, bring something actually to the table, because that is more than everything. Because at the end of the day, you can be at the table making decision, or you can be at the table being the meal.
Being served. So, Tari, I want to get your thoughts. Do you agree with Christopher? Should we be advocating now for some kind of quota for youth participation, seats, a number of seats set aside maybe in the National Assembly, or even pushing the political parties like we've seen with some of the amendments for the Electoral Act that are now being reconsidered involving women to have a certain number of positions or situations open up for them? Is the quota system the way to go?
It's a way. It's one way to go, I believe. See, all this journey, it's all hands on deck. Whatever way that it can be accomplished. So yes, if that can be accomplished, I feel that it will go a long way. But while that is happening, young people also need to step up and step out, because if there are no young people, just the same argument with the women participation. Many times I've been in a lot of forums, even with lawmakers, even with civil society, to you, okay, you want women participation in governance, but where are the women? You hear that a lot. And it's the same thing with young people. Where are the young people? Where are the young people that are stepping out? So young people need to first we need to get ourselves in order. We need to get ourselves together. We need to grow our value. We need to have a vision. We need to understand the political space and then put ourselves forward. We need to come together and build structures beyond social media, structures that are actually boots on ground in communities, at polling units, wherever we need, need our voices to be heard. So that needs to happen. And for me, the way I even look at it, over 60% of the population is young. You can say that under 30 or under 35. So it's inevitable that out of this, it's constantly going to shift. And I think that the politicians occupying, positions of power, they understand this. They know that they cannot hold on to this thing forever, which is why they are grooming their sons and grooming their daughters, because they know that, okay, these people, it's inevitable. They are going to need to come and occupy these positions. But politics is not politics should not be hereditary. Governance should not be, we don't operate a monarchical system. It's a democracy. So we need to go beyond people bringing their sons and daughters to come and take over from them. We who don't have anybody who has gone ahead of us, in the political space, need to sit down and identify what we need to bring to the table and then push ourselves forward. So yes, while quota system is great, and I mean, I see that's what the Not Too Young to Run bill, I guess those are the directions that these things are trying to go to eventually, where there will be a quota system set aside. But I guarantee you, this is Nigeria. People will have the credible young people who are going to come and occupy these seats. So that's why we as young people need to focus on building that credibility. Because, I mean, your credibility will speak for you in places where no godfather can speak for you, or where no amount of money can go and give you a voice. So we need to focus on building our credibility and making ourselves a force to reckon with within the political space.
So I have two more questions that I want to hear from both of you. So I'll ask that we keep the answers short. And that's about the fact that there's an absence, there seems to be an absence of a strategic political agenda among young Nigerians. So even if you're not part of a party or you are part of the party, what are the priority issues for young Nigerians that many people would expect young candidates or youth candidates to sort of push forth and to put on the table? 2023 is coming. We know that there's all the conversations around JAPA that's happening, all the conversations around the dissatisfaction older Nigerians feel as well. But what's the agenda for young people? So even if a candidate is coming out to be pro-youth, even if they're not young, what's the agenda that young Nigerians expect to be set? Christopher, let me start with you very quickly so I can get my last question.
Yes. So I think the agenda should be clear. It should start from youth empowerment, economic development, capacity building, because we've had a deficit in those areas. Okay, so because it takes you being built to understand how to participate in some of these things. The youth themselves, like you mentioned, if they come into power, they need to have something to offer. Okay, so in my opinion, have a clear-cut goal. Again, youth empowerment, economic development, and capacity building. Those should be forefronts, and many others to kind of push our people forward.
Okay, and of course, I would going to listen to a candidate should ask the how of those things. How will those things be done? But Tari, very quickly, what would you think is a strategic political agenda for young Nigerians ahead of 2023?
Well, as to add to what Christopher has said, you know, youth empowerment is vital. And I always like to ask the question, what does empowerment entail? Like he said, capacity building is very important. A lot of young people are just don't seem to have a direction of what they should see their lives to be. So that's very important. And education. I mean, if over 60% of the population is below 30, then where typically do you find below 30s in educational institutions around the country? And if our educational institutions are broken down and not giving us the quality of education that we have, then what quality of young people are they producing? So I think that's vital. We need to push for good education, to push for quality education for our young people, so that even the people that we expect to come and occupy these positions of office at the end of the day, then they will have the credibility that we're talking about when they have been given quality education. So I think education is important, financial empowerment for young entrepreneurs, which I see a lot of happening already, whether it's from the private sector, and there is some of that coming from government and all that, but much more needs to happen, you know, because there needs to be a lot of entrepreneurial education, even within universities, even within the curriculums of universities, and maybe even secondary schools as far as that, so that young people are empowered enough to make their own way.
All right, so final question, Tari, I'll start with you. Answer in 1 minute. You can be a pro-youth candidate and not actually be a youth. So if we're having this conversation, what then do we expect is the reason we're asking young people to come to the table? What do young candidates or youth candidates bring to the table that you think has been missing in the political scene of Nigeria?
Well, an awareness that in the long run, if Nigeria does not work, we are the ones who are going to suffer for it, because we have a longer time to deal with the consequences. So I feel that if we are sensitive enough to understand this, then we would realize that we need to build institutions and systems that are going to work into the future. Personally, for me, as a young person, you know, who is going into governance, that's very important for me. Let's build systems that work, because it's systems and structures that make up Nigeria. And if those systems around the scope are working, then we are building into the future. So I think that's what we have. We have the most to lose from a failed Nigeria at the end of the day.
So Christopher, same question to you. What do young Nigerians bring to the political scene that's possibly missing? Because you can be a pro-youth, pro-woman candidate without being either of those things.
Yes, it is clear, right? You can be those without being a youth. However, there is an adage that says, if you wear the shoe, you know where it hurts, okay? Youths, you can advocate for youth without being a youth, but I think you can advocate for youth being a youth even better because you're feeling the system, you're part of the demographic. You can be somewhere on the road, a fellow youth sees you, and you're very accessible, right? So the accessibility of being a youth is different from the accessibility of being an older person. I think, yes, to answer your question directly, when you are a youth representing youth, it gives more sense of responsibility. And also, like Tari had mentioned, you are actually doing a service to yourself because you're going to be part of the system longer. Yes.
All right. We will leave the conversation at that. 2023 is less than a year away, and the conversations around who should be involved, what level of involvement, and how the involvement should be will, of course, continue. Thank you to my guests for joining me, Tari, Taylaur, and Christopher Ojo. Thank you so much for joining me, Tari. Thank you so much, Christopher.
Thank
you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I want to leave you with this. The number of youth age 18 to 29, based on the youth definition given by the National Youth Policy Organization, voted into elective positions in Nigeria is less than 1%. Further, there are no youth in the cabinet that was formed by President Muhammadu Buhari, and neither is there youth in the National Assembly. This is despite young Nigerians making up over 67% of registered voters on average, which means that whoever they decide to vote for is literally guaranteed to win the election. With a rapidly expanding population, the future of Africa in general and Nigeria in particular belongs to the youth, who have a vital role to play in national development. The onus therefore rests on African leaders to ensure that young people are given the pride of place in African politics. But I would say, if they won't give you the place, maybe you need to take it. This is Village Square Africa. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. I'll see you next time.